What would you do if the truth you stumbled upon could burn your entire life to the ground? That question echoed in my mind the moment I found it, tucked deep beneath a mess of tissues and an empty bottle of shampoo. I wasn't looking for anything, just tossing some trash while tidying up our master bathroom. But fate has a way of dropping bombs when you least expect it. There it was, a pregnancy test, positive. Two unmistakable pink lines staring back at me like a cruel joke. And the worst part? It wasn't mine. That much was obvious. I stood there frozen, the plastic stick trembling slightly in my hand as the weight of it hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too still, like time itself had paused to witness my heartbreak. I stared at that little piece of plastic for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 30 seconds. My brain fought to make sense of what my eyes were seeing, but the math never added up. Lena hadn't said a damn word to me. We weren't trying for a baby. In fact, she'd been avoiding intimacy with surgical precision for months, excuses stacked neatly like a defense mechanism. Long nights at her job, killer migraines, emotional burnout, a need for space. I had memorized the script by now, but this was undeniable. It wasn't just a pregnancy test. It was the smoking gun. Proof of something deeper, something rotten, and my wife had been hiding it right under my nose. Lena always had a way of staying 2 steps ahead. That was one of the first things I admired about her back when we met at a mutual friend's backyard BBQ in Charlotte. She had this captivating energy, smart, ambitious, poised like someone who always had a backup plan. But now, for the first time in 8 years of marriage, she had slipped. And it wasn't just a simple mistake. Lena didn't make mistakes. If she left this test in the trash, it was because she never thought I'd find it. Or worse, she thought I wouldn't have the nerve to connect the dots. She was wrong. I didn't confront her right away. No raised voices, no flying accusations. That would have been too easy, too emotional. And Lena? She was a professional when it came to flipping the script, turning an argument around until I was the one apologizing for daring to question her. Not this time. I wouldn't give her that out. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I placed the test back exactly where I found it, layered the trash to look untouched, and walked out of that bathroom like I hadn't just discovered the biggest lie of my life. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in hand, pretending to scroll while my heart pounded against my ribs like a war drum. I could hear her upstairs, water running from the shower, soft hums under her breath. She had no idea. When she finally came down, Lena looked radiant. Her damp curls were pulled into a loose bun, skin glowing from the steam, wearing that oversized sweater she stole from me years ago. She poured herself a cup of coffee, thumb scrolling through Instagram, a serene smile on her lips, the picture of normal. She didn't even glance my way, didn't flinch, didn't offer a word. And in that moment, I realized just how deep her deception ran. I wanted to scream, to slam the mug out of her hand and demand she look me in the eye and explain. But instead, I smiled, cool, calm, rehearsed. "You look like you slept well," I said softly. "Big day at work?" She looked up briefly, her expression unreadable, then shrugged. "Same old meetings, deadlines. You know." Her voice was light, nonchalant, but to me every syllable was a red flag. That's the thing about skilled liars. They don't stumble. They glide. And Lena? She was gliding effortlessly, which only made me more certain I had to outmaneuver her if I was going to learn the truth. That night I didn't sleep, not because I was devastated or unsure of what came next. No, my mind was a machine now, calculating, observing, planning. She thought she was playing chess, but I was learning the board. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. By morning, I had a plan. At breakfast, Lena was all smiles. She moved through the kitchen with the grace of someone who believed the world still revolved around her carefully curated lies. She kissed me on the cheek, soft and sweet, like she'd done 1,000 times before, and placed a warm plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of me. "Eat up, champ," she said with a wink. "You've been looking so drained lately." It took everything in me not to recoil. That kiss, that smile, that casual warmth. It was all theater, a performance for an audience she didn't even know was watching. I smiled back, genuinely even. It was easy when I knew I was wearing a mask, too. We talked over coffee, small talk mostly. She joked about her boss, a guy named Owen who apparently couldn't send a coherent email to save his life. Normally, I would have laughed along, maybe added a few office war stories of my own. But today, every word that left her mouth felt like a trapdoor under my feet. I watched her like a hawk. Every twitch of her eyebrow, every pause between sentences, every flicker of her eyes toward her phone, which notably never left her side. Lena had never been the type to obsess over her phone. Sure, she texted, she scrolled, but she usually left it lying around the house like an afterthought. But that morning it was practically welded to her hand. She carried it from the table to the sink, took it with her when she disappeared into the bathroom. 3 times. Each time she came out, she offered a flippant excuse. "You okay?" I asked, careful to keep my voice curious but unconcerned. "You've been in there a lot this morning." She hesitated, barely a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Yeah," she said with a small laugh. "Must have been that sushi from Tuesday. My stomach's a mess." Sushi? We hadn't eaten sushi in weeks, maybe a month. I smiled and nodded. "Huh, thought we'd had pizza Tuesday." She blinked. Another beat of hesitation. "Oh, right, pizza. Must have been Monday then." I didn't push it, I didn't need to. That one slip was enough to harden my suspicion into certainty. If she was lying about something as minor as dinner, what else was she hiding? Later that day, after she left for work, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. Just breathing. Just existing in the quiet house I thought I knew. And then I walked over to the trash can. My hands shook as I pulled up the layers I had carefully reassembled the night before. Tissues, shampoo bottle, an old razor cartridge. And there it was again, still tucked away, like a secret hiding in plain sight. The test. But this time, I wasn't here to dwell on it. I was here to dig. I went through the rest of the trash. Every receipt, every package, every crumpled shopping bag. I felt disgusting, like a man unspooling his dignity one piece of garbage at a time. But this wasn't about pride anymore. This was about survival. That's when I found it. A small, glossy receipt, barely wrinkled, from a boutique in Winston-Salem, about 30 minutes from where we lived in Raleigh. It was dated 2 days ago. The list was short but damning. Silk lingerie, 1 set. Scented candles, jasmine and vanilla. Men's cologne, 3.4 Oz. I sat on the kitchen floor, holding that tiny square of proof like it was an ancient scroll. My heart thudded loud in my ears. None of that was for me. I hadn't received a gift in months, not even a candle for my office. But someone else had. And now I had a new question that wouldn't leave me alone. Who the hell was he? That evening, Lena came home like it was any other Thursday. She kicked off her heels at the door, muttered something about traffic, and flopped onto the couch like she hadn't detonated a nuclear bomb in our lives. We were halfway through a bad reality TV show when I tested the waters. "So," I said, pretending to keep my eyes on the screen, "who's the cologne for?" Her head turned so fast I thought she might give herself whiplash. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice forced light, but her eyes already scanning for exits. I held up the receipt. "The scarf from Tuesday." For a moment she didn't speak. Her lips parted, her eyes widened. I saw the flicker of panic, the raw, unfiltered kind. But it vanished just as quickly as it came. "Oh," she said with a breathy laugh. "That's for my boss. His birthday's coming up. The team pitched in for a gift. I didn't think it was a big deal." Her lie was neat, clean, professionally packaged. Just enough truth to sound believable. And Lena had always been good at that, mixing reality with fiction like a seasoned screenwriter. I smiled and nodded. "Nice of you to take the lead on that. I'm sure he'll love it." She exhaled, settling deeper into the couch. Her shoulders softened. She thought she'd won, that I'd bought it, that the curtain had fallen and the show was over. But I wasn't done, not even close. That night, after she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake with her soft breathing filling the silence. I stared at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly overhead, each rotation ticking like a clock, counting down to something inevitable. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was focused. The lies had stopped hurting. Now they were clues, breadcrumbs leading to a truth I could almost taste. And the more Lena thought she was in control, the sloppier she became. I just had to wait. People like her, people who think they're invincible, they always get careless. And when they do, that's when you strike. This time I wouldn't miss. The next morning I made my move. Lena left the house around 7:45 a.m., same as usual. She wore a pale blue blouse I hadn't seen before, perfectly tucked into tailored black slacks. Her makeup was light but deliberate, and she wore perfume, soft and floral, the kind she only used for special occasions. But what caught my attention most was the way she lingered in the mirror before leaving. She checked herself twice, smoothed her blouse, applied a second coat of lipstick. Not for me, of course. Lena hadn't dressed up for me in months. She kissed me on the forehead like a dutiful wife and whispered, "Have a good day, babe." Then she was gone. I waited exactly 3 minutes before grabbing my keys and following her. I knew her route. Lena's job was downtown, 20 minutes through steady traffic. She usually parked in the garage near Capitol Square. Same level every day, same little routine. And at first, it looked like she was headed straight there. But then, she turned left, not downtown, not toward the Capitol. She took a detour. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, slowing as she veered off onto Oak Ridge Boulevard, far too early in her commute to be cutting through traffic. I stayed 3 cars behind, ducking behind a landscaping truck at one red light just to be safe. She didn't notice. I followed her to the edge of town, past the bookstores and yoga studios, until she pulled into a small cafe nestled between a nail salon and a boutique clothing store. It was the kind of place we used to go to when we were first married, before things got complicated, before she started building a second life. She parked, got out. She wasn't meeting a client. She wasn't there for a coffee to go. She was meeting him. He was already waiting near the door, wearing a slate gray button-up and holding 2 coffees in his hand. He looked about my age, late 30s, maybe early 40s. Fit, confident, polished in the way corporate men tend to be when they're juggling both a career and an affair. They smiled at each other like a couple in a romantic comedy, the kind of smile Lena hadn't given me in over a year. Then he reached out and kissed her cheek, lingering, familiar. And she didn't flinch. She leaned in. I parked a block away, just far enough to stay out of sight, and watched from my car. My pulse thudded like a war drum in my chest. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was cold, methodical. They sat at a corner table, him on the bench, her on the chair across from him, knees pointed inward like a secret they were both keeping. She laughed, loud enough that I could hear it through the crack in my window. Her hand brushed his when he passed her a napkin. They shared a pastry, leaning in like high school sweethearts who thought they were invisible. It made me sick, and yet I couldn't look away. I took pictures, photo after photo. My hands shook as I zoomed in to capture every damning detail. Her hand on his arm on the back of her chair, the smile that told me everything I didn't want to believe. They stayed for an hour, and when they got up to leave, I followed again. Slower this time, careful. They didn't head to an office or a client meeting. They didn't part ways like professionals. Instead, they walked toward the parking lot together, their shoulders bumping. And then, God help me, he brushed a strand of hair from her face before leaning in and whispering something in her ear. She laughed, and then she kissed him. Not a friendly peck, not a harmless goodbye, a kiss that shattered any remaining doubt. I drove home in silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of my tires against the road and the ringing in my ears. Lena wasn't just lying, she wasn't just cheating. She was building a life without me, and she thought I wouldn't notice. She thought I was still that naive husband, the one who trusted too easily and questioned too little. But that man was gone. She killed him with that kiss. And the man who came home that afternoon was someone else entirely. That evening, Lena returned like nothing had happened. She walked through the door with takeout in her hands, smiling like a woman who just had the most peaceful day of her life. "Got your favorite," she chirped, unpacking barbecue ribs and mac and cheese onto the counter. "You've been working so hard lately. Figured we'd have a little treat tonight." I smiled and thanked her, playing along, the actor in a play I hadn't auditioned for but now knew by heart. We sat down at the table, just the 2 of us. She filled the silence with stories from work, laughed about how her coworker Rachel couldn't format a PDF to save her life. She even asked about my day, like she genuinely cared. I played my part. I told her a funny story about a vendor who kept calling me Mr. Easton instead of Evan, and she laughed a little too hard. She was trying to keep up the illusion, pull me back into the web. But I wasn't the fly anymore. I was the spider now. Later, as I cleared the plates and wiped down the counter, I leaned in casually and said, "You've been busy at the office lately." She didn't look up from her phone. "Yeah, you know how it is. Late nights, early mornings, it's impressive," I added. That made her pause. She looked at me, searching my face for some sign, some hint that I knew, but I kept my expression neutral. curious, casual. Building our future, right? I added, echoing a phrase she'd used before. She hesitated again, a flicker of something behind her eyes. Then she smiled and nodded. That's right, just a lot going on right now. I bet, I said, drying my hands, especially with that coffee meeting this morning. She froze, just for a second. But that second was enough. Oh, that, she said too quickly. Just some networking thing. You know, connections. Sure, I said, turning away so she wouldn't see the storm behind my eyes. Networking sounds cozy. Her voice rose an octave. Evan, what are you getting at? I turned back to her and smiled, a slow, calm smile. Nothing, I said, just curious. She didn't respond. She just stared, eyes narrowed, fingers clenched around her phone. And I knew without a doubt that she was terrified. She just didn't know how much I already had. That night, Lena fell asleep easily, like she always did. Maybe the guilt wasn't heavy enough to keep her awake. Or maybe she'd simply grown used to lying so effortlessly that her conscience had stopped keeping score. Either way, she curled up on her side of the bed, sighed once, and drifted off, peaceful and oblivious. Meanwhile, I lay next to her, wide awake, staring at the ceiling fan again. But this time, my thoughts weren't chaotic. They were sharp, focused. I was past the disbelief, past the heartbreak, even past the rage. Now I was somewhere else entirely, an emotional no man's land where only cold strategy existed. I didn't want to scream anymore. I didn't even want to cry. I wanted the truth, and I wanted it locked, loaded, and undeniable. The next day, once Lena left for work, I sat down at her laptop. I wasn't proud of it. I'm not the kind of man who snoops through devices, at least I wasn't. But the game had changed. And if she could lie to my face, build an entirely separate life behind my back, and carry another man's child while sleeping under my roof, then my morals could take a back seat. Besides, she made it too easy. Her password, our anniversary date, sloppy. Within seconds, I had access to everything. Her inbox, her calendar, her digital paper trail. And what I found made my blood run cold. Her email was a tapestry of betrayal. Threaded between boring work messages and forwarded meeting invites were emails from someone named Luke R. Just initials, no full name. Clever, clean, but not clever enough. They weren't explicit, not in a way that would raise alarms to the average person, but I wasn't average anymore. I knew what to look for. The way she replied to him too fast. The inside jokes. The one-liners that looked innocent if you read them once, but screamed intimacy if you read them twice. Things like, same coffee spot Friday? Love seeing you last time. Can't wait to breathe again. Counting down. Still thinking about that morning. My jaw clenched. This wasn't new. It had been going on for months. I switched to her calendar next. It was meticulously organized, like everything Lena did. Meetings, deadlines, lunch blocks. But near the bottom of the week, something caught my eye. Friday, 3 p.m., Dr. Pierce, prenatal. I blinked, then blinked again. Prenatal. So not only was she pregnant, but she was tracking her appointments, secretly, precisely, like some sick little project she was proud of, all without saying a single word to me. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the calendar as the reality of it washed over me. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just a secret affair. She was carrying another man's child, planning to raise it in my house, on my dime, wearing my last name. And if I hadn't found that test, if I hadn't followed my instincts, she probably would have let me think it was mine. I stood up so fast the chair screeched against the tile. My hands were shaking again, but not from shock, not from heartbreak, from resolve. This wasn't over. I did what any man would do when he's about to drop a nuke on a fantasy world built on lies. I dug into him. Luke R. It didn't take long. His full name was in his email signature. Luke Remington, a senior consultant at a high-end firm in Raleigh. Neat little LinkedIn profile, great smile, Ivy League education, a family man, married. 2 kids, boy and girl, golden retriever in the backyard. Instagram perfect. I stared at his page for a long time. His wife's name was Christine, pretty, blonde, PTA type, the kind of woman who posts lunchbox inspiration and mom quotes on her stories. I bet she had no idea. Not yet. That was the crack I needed. Now, it wasn't just Lena's lie I was dealing with. It was Luke's too. And that meant leverage, pressure, options. I didn't need to shout or threaten. I didn't even need to confront Lena yet. I just needed to keep watching, keep gathering. Let them believe they were safe for just a little while longer. Because what they didn't know, what neither of them realized, was that I wasn't trying to save the marriage anymore. I was building a case, one that would burn them both. And by the time I was finished, they'd regret every secret they ever shared. Friday came like a storm I'd been waiting to chase. Lena left the house at 7:48 a.m., just 2 minutes behind her usual schedule. That alone told me she was nervous. I watched from the upstairs window, a silent observer to the life she thought she was orchestrating in secret. She wore her presentation outfit, tailored navy dress, nude pumps, hair down in waves, a light pink lipstick I'd never seen before. It wasn't for work, it was for him. I waited until her SUV turned out of the neighborhood. Then I grabbed my bag, keys, and phone, already prepped with a full battery and enough storage to capture every moment I was about to witness. By 2:30, I was parked across the street from Pierce Women's Health, a nondescript brick building nestled between a sleepy pharmacy and an orthodontist's office. The place didn't scream life-altering betrayal. It looked boring, safe, deceptively ordinary, until it wasn't. At exactly 2:58 p.m., Lena pulled into the lot, right on time. She stepped out of the car, paused, and looked around. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't confident. She was nervous. Good. That meant her mask was cracking. And then, like clockwork, Luke arrived. He parked on the other side of the lot and approached with practiced ease. Casual but calculated, holding two coffees like it was just another afternoon. They greeted each other like lovers in a movie. No hesitation, no guilt, no pause for second thoughts. She hugged him. He kissed her cheek. And I stayed in the car, steady as stone, documenting every second. They walked in together, shoulders brushing, their footsteps matching in rhythm like a couple who had long since decided they belonged to one another. I could have stormed in right then, could have exploded, but I didn't. Instead, I waited 10 minutes, then got out of the car, circled around the back of the building, and found a propped open staff door, probably left open for a delivery. I slipped inside unnoticed. The hallway was quiet and smelled like rubbing alcohol. Generic posters of smiling mothers and babies lined the walls. I crept forward, heart pounding, until I heard voices drifting through a cracked door. I peered inside. There they were, Lena and Luke, sitting together in front of a doctor, a woman with a clipboard pointing at a chart. Lena was smiling, her hand rested gently on her stomach. Luke leaned in, nodding, asking questions, beaming like a man who thought his life was perfect. I pulled out my phone and pressed record, not because I needed proof anymore, I already had it, but because I wanted to watch this again. Later, when I exposed them both. I left before they came out. I didn't need to hear the heartbeat, didn't need to know the due date. I had everything I needed. Back in my car, I stared at the video, frame by frame. The way Luke touched her back, the way she looked at him, the doctor smiling like she was part of a miracle. They were all actors in a play I never auditioned for. But now, it was time to take center stage. That night, Lena came home like it was just another Friday. She kicked off her shoes, complained about traffic, and tossed her bag onto the counter. "Want Thai or Mexican tonight?" she asked, already opening the food delivery app. "I could go for dumplings." "Let's eat out," I said, calm as ever. "It's been a while." She blinked as surprised. "Really?" "Yeah," I said, grabbing my keys. "Let's make it nice, just the two of us." We ended up at an upscale Italian spot downtown, La Rosa. White tablecloths, soft candlelight, overpriced wine. Lena wore a red dress. I noticed because I hadn't seen it before. It hugged her curves, dipped slightly in the back. It wasn't for me, but that was fine. She didn't know she was dressing for her own funeral. Not literally, of course. Just the death of everything she'd tried to build on lies. We ordered, talked lightly, pasta, wine, empty laughter. She was in good spirits, probably thinking the worst was behind her. Halfway through the meal, I set my fork down, took a sip of wine, and said, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about us lately." Her smile twitched. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I nodded. "You've seemed distracted. Different." She looked down at her plate, twirling pasta on her fork. "Just stressed," she said. "Work's been crazy. Clients, late nights." "You know." "I do," I said. Then I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, turned the screen toward her, paused on the video from the clinic, and pressed play. The color drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I let it run for 10 seconds before hitting pause. The screen froze on Luke brushing her hair behind her ear. Want to try that again? I asked, my voice a razor blade in velvet. Lena's eyes darted around the restaurant like someone drowning, looking for something to grab. Her napkin, her wine glass, anything. Evan, this isn't what it looks like. I laughed, not a big laugh, just enough to show her how pathetic that line sounded. Wrong answer, I said. Let's try this instead. How long? How far along? When exactly were you going to tell me I was raising someone else's kid? She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally whispered, I didn't want to hurt you. Oh, I said, eyes narrowing. Then you probably shouldn't have gotten pregnant with another man's baby. Her voice cracked after that. She tried to spin it, claimed it wasn't serious at first, that she didn't know how to end it, that she was confused, that Luke was different. He listens to me, she whispered. He makes me feel alive. Then go be alive with him, I said, rising from the table. But understand this, your secret's dead, and I'm the one who buried it. I left the restaurant with the bill unpaid and her jaw still trembling. When I walked out of La Rosa that night, the city air hit me like a second wind. Cool, biting, bracing. Behind me, Lena sat frozen at our table, a statue carved out of guilt and fear. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She wasn't my problem anymore. I got home before she did, poured myself a drink, neat, no ice, and sat at the kitchen table in silence. She came in 20 minutes later. Her heels tapped across the hardwood like a guilty heartbeat. She hesitated in the doorway, looking at me like a kid caught sneaking out past curfew. You just left me there, she said quietly, her voice tight. That was humiliating. Good, I replied, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Get used to it. She flinched. For the first time, I saw her drop the act entirely. No seduction, no gaslighting, no manufactured innocence. Just a woman who realized she no longer held the upper hand. We're really doing this, she asked, voice cracking. I stood, slow and deliberate, and walked toward her with the calm of someone who already knew the ending. We did them, I said. You and Luke. The two of you burned this house down while I was inside. She didn't respond, just crossed her arms and stared at the floor, like the truth might stop existing if she didn't look it in the eye. That night, I laid down the terms. You're going to pack your things tonight. You can go to Luke or rent a motel or move in with your lies. I don't care. She opened her mouth to protest. I pulled out my phone again, flipped to the folder labeled Truth, photos, emails, the video from the clinic. Don't, I warned, unless you want me to send all of this to Luke's wife right now. Her mouth closed. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I had no sympathy left. She could cry herself empty. It wouldn't change what she'd done. I gave you everything, I said softly, and you gave me this. She packed in silence, 3 suitcases, 2 garbage bags, 1 shattered marriage. She didn't try to hug me, didn't beg, just rolled her bags to the front door and paused. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, eyes red. I didn't think. That's your problem, I cut in. You didn't think I'd ever wake up. Then I opened the door and let her walk out of the life she tried to fake. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a mug of black coffee and an open email draft. To Christine Remington, subject, something you deserve to know. I didn't embellish. I didn't get poetic. I just attached the photos, the video, and a short message. I thought you should see this. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I know what it's like to be lied to. I hovered over send for a long moment. Then I clicked. And that's when everything really started to unravel. She responded within an hour. Her message was raw, bare, full of pain. She hadn't known. Not a clue. Luke had been the perfect husband, coach for their son's baseball team, weekend pancake maker, giver of forehead kisses and freshly cut flowers. She thanked me, said I'd given her back her clarity, said she was done with him. Christine wasn't a woman to sit in her pain. She took action. In less than 48 hours, she'd kicked Luke out, canceled his credit cards, and aired the entire affair to her inner circle. By the end of the week, I heard he was on leave from work to focus on personal matters. Good, 1 down. Luke called me a few days later. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. Evan, what the hell did you do? His voice was hoarse, desperate. Cleaned up your mess, I replied, calm as ever. You ruined my life. I laughed. You ruined your own. I just turned on the lights. He started to threaten me, legal action, defamation, consequences, but I shut him down cold. I have everything. You want to go to court? Fine. We'll play it all out. Or you can disappear, quietly, and maybe salvage whatever's left. He went silent. then hung up. And just like that, the man who thought he could steal my wife, my peace, and my future, he vanished. Lena tried to reach out once. A single text. Kuledasi, can we talk? I didn't answer. What was left to say? She had her chance. She made her choices. Now she could live with them. I deleted the message, blocked her number, erased the digital trail, not out of spite, out of peace, because I was done playing the fool. In the weeks that followed, the silence in the house felt good. Not empty, not sad, just quiet. I started waking up early again, running, reading, playing guitar. I dug out old hobbies, old friendships, reclaimed parts of myself that had slowly eroded under years of manipulation. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer controlled me. It had transformed me. And one afternoon, while organizing my desk drawer, I found an old photo. Me and Lena at the beach during our second anniversary. We looked young, carefree, happy, or pretending to be. I stared at it for a long time. Then I fed it into the shredder. The past had taken enough from me. It didn't deserve to live in my drawer. People ask me now, do you regret it? The digging, the exposing, the confrontation? No, not for a second. Because sometimes the truth isn't just meant to be uncovered. It's meant to be dragged into the light, piece by piece, until there's no shadow left to hide in. And if you've ever been lied to, made to feel crazy, ignored the signs because your love was louder than your logic, you're not alone. You're not weak, but you do deserve better. If you've been through something like this, or if you've ever felt that pit in your stomach and didn't know whether to trust it, tell your story, or just hit follow, because this isn't the only story like mine. And trust me, the next one, it's even darker.